Red Pill Revelations, Volume 1. Volume 1. All right, this is episode 9 and 10, if we break this up. But this particular group, I think we'll call Red Pill Revelations.
I like it.
Mad Dad City, Red Pill Revelations.
Subgroup.
Yeah, man. So I've had a cool...
The skiff.
The skiff. Yeah, this is the skiff.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
God, why aren't they in the skiff? I don't understand.
The Red Pill
It's
skiff.
making me mad. Get in the skiff.
Rich, you know what the skiff is?
No.
Oh, we got to get your mic.
Skiff. Sensitive compartmented information facility.
Skiff.
The skiff. So
We're all about acronyms here.
So this week in the alien UFO congressional testimonies, did you watch any of that? Some. So the skiff is what they kept referring to anytime there was actually some actual locations or people that wanted to be named to
Actual information.
any
that
real
we want.
information that we wanted, other than yes, I've seen live bodies. Where? Let's get in the skiff.
Anything you'd qualify as proof.
There we go.
for the
That stuff was cool, though. I watched, I don't know, a couple hours of the testimony. I probably watched 45 minutes, and then I tried to catch people that reviewed the highlights. All stuff that, personally, I think we've seen from it was just actually under oath in front of a congressional hearing. So that was interesting to check out, man.
They were still lying.
Yeah, they were still lying.
Yeah, I actually went through the 2 hours and 20 minutes. I watched
Did
the
you?
whole thing. I really wanted to understand where the mindset was of each of the House members and the committee, why they were asking the questions that they were, and how they differentiated from each other. So I didn't want to get little shorts just to get a little snippet because you kind of lose the entire context of it. So I wanted to watch the whole thing in its entirety, and it was just incredible how engaging they all were into learning more. Actually, you'd have some that asked better questions than others, but yeah, it was well done.
Did you see the letter sent out by Kirkpatrick afterwards?
I did.
What are your
Who's Kirkpatrick?
Arrow? Well, no, go ahead, because he basically was saying that it sounded like Grush, who's the main witness.
Yeah, he's the center. He's the center guy. He's been the one the past month and a half or two, really just giving interviews on all of his experience and what he's come across.
So it sounds to me like Kirkpatrick was saying, and he's the head of Arrow, AARO, which you can tell us what that stands for, but they're the ones researching
All
and looking
Anomaly
into
Resolution Office.
what's going on in our skies. And so he's trying to take a scientific approach to kind of lay out the case of exactly what's going on without the, woo-woo, like conspiracy stuff. Just kind of let's get through all that. Let's find out what's actually going on. So he's tasked by the government to figure this out. He came out and said, this guy, this witness, hasn't come and talked to me. He's putting these claims out there. I haven't seen him. We have no proof,
He's like, it's
And
a
he's
slap
the
in the
guy.
face. It's a slap in the face to the folks that are part of this Arrow program. And he basically did it on his own personal LinkedIn page. This was not an official document. It wasn't coming from the Pentagon. They didn't sanction it, but he did it on a personal level, saying this is a slap in the face to all those that are involved with the Arrow program. And again, that stands for All Anomaly Resolution Office. And I don't know. I don't know what. To me, it's like he's trying to discredit these guys.
Dude,
But
all I'm trying to say is I've had some of my kids sit down and watch this, right? I'm like, this is real, talking about real aliens in live time and real proceedings at the real government offices. And they're just like, what? This is real? I'm like, yeah. And then they're like, sort of cool, and they're sort of disinterested. And I'm like, why is no one paying more attention to this? You know what I'm saying?
They're waiting for the video and the pictures and the like here, these are fake and these are real, and
this was cracking the egg.
Rich,
as
what's
they
your
said.
what have you followed this at all? Like, is this
I have, but I was as you guys were talking. If you're a Christian, a Bible person, do aliens really surprise you?
You got angels and spirits that were discussed 10,000 years ago.
Well, that's the thing. You ask three
Right.
different people what it means to be Christian, you get three different answers.
Now, okay, right, absolutely right.
So, yeah.
But it's you would be crazy to believe that whoever created this is just it. You know what I mean? So none of it surprises me. So I guess maybe it doesn't interest me that much in terms of just read Genesis, then read the book of Enoch. And then all of this is like, well, they've been hiding this in plain sight. And then you get into the LiDAR stuff that we always talk about. There's so much uncovered stuff that
discovery wise,
and stuff beyond us, like way beyond us. And I think that's what piques the interest to go out of.
Frankly, I'm mad because we don't know yet. That's what I just want. We all want to know. I'm not afraid of whatever the truth would reveal, even though apparently the stories are. I think it was Eisenhower, maybe it was somebody else, whoever supposedly learned the truth.
Right.
What he did is he went and cried for like an hour in the corner
Right.
because it was so depressing and sad. And then I forget. We might have talked about this last. I forget.
I think it was Carter. Jimmy Carter.
There you go. So yeah, Carter goes and cries in the corner when he learns why or what's really going on. But then there's some communication. I think it was some of these kids, maybe from the Ariel phenomenon, maybe from that movie or from that documentary. But the communication from the alien was, you guys have no idea of your true potential, but you're nowhere near it, or you'll never get there, or something like that. And so it was a sad, the alien felt sorry for the human. And so it kind of ties into like, I don't know if it's the Book of Enoch or what, but the Billy Carson does kind of say we're a population that was created to help, I don't know, whatever the other aliens that needed their gold mined to save their planet, which is, dude, how do you even go there? You know what I mean? Like, how do you actually think along those lines?
Well, then you get into Hollywood, and I mean, all you're doing is describing the movie Transformers I just watched.
Yeah, I mean, you got these puppeteers that are in charge of all these major corporations, and they hide information within these Hollywood movies that are truth, and they Hollywoodize them, and then it distorts the truth. And it's like, well, was it like Independence Day? It's just, it throws everybody off course. And I know we've talked about that in a previous podcast, but that actually is a good segment into one of my did you knows is
let's do it.
Yeah.
So these did you knows are where the YouTube short material can come from, or the TikTok type material whenever we get there. So Zeke, wait a second. Ooh, I didn't turn that one on record. Hit us with a did you know?
Yeah. So, Rich, I didn't send it to you. I'll get your number digits here afterwards, but I sent these guys a TikTok video. Billy Carson, we reference him a lot. The guy seems like a prophet. Everything he says is so concise and to the lay person can understand his terms. He talks about dimensions in this TikTok video that I was watching. Naturally, it's a video of his own that's just edited down and placed on TikTok, but talks about the different dimensions. And you're talking about, how the extraterrestrial beings, what they call EBEs, how they're communicating telepathically. And they're just so advanced, and they're like, you guys don't understand, your true nature and the true power that you guys have. And he gets into talking about the different dimensions and what they are. And one dimension is when you write on a piece of paper from one point to another. That's one dimension. Dimension number 2 is connecting those points together to maybe write a house or some sort of object. And then the third dimension is us looking at that house. We're a third dimensional world. So a lot of these extraterrestrial beings, he said, are fourth dimension. So the fourth dimension, everybody thinks it's like 3D printing. They consider that like third dimension. That's not third dimension. The third dimension is taking a step back, and you can see the third.
The fourth dimension.
The fourth dimension. I'm sorry. Fourth dimension is taking a step back and seeing the past, present, and future of the third dimension. So the third dimension is like a shadow of the fourth dimension.
That's how you remove the existence of time, as you can see all of it.
Exactly, because that's why time is really a fictitious. In our dimension, it's a linear model.
Right.
But when you take a step back, it's in the fourth dimension. It's all it's all encompassing.
Okay.
So, and then supposedly there's 11 dimensions. So
yeah, well, let's try to go to a fifth dimension. What does that mean?
Yeah.
I think the fourth dimension, you can visualize it a little bit. I think Christopher Nolan did a good job in Interstellar, maybe projecting it in some sort of visual
gravity.
Capacity. Yeah. What's the fifth dimension then?
So it seems like everything is taking a step back, and looking at it from a different lens. And the one dimension, the second dimension, the third, you're continually taking a camera and you're zooming out and looking at it from like a perspective up in the clouds, looking back down on something that might be a shadow, which is when then you get involved with frequencies and vibrations. So that leads into that whole conversation. Much like Skinwalker Ranch and the 1.6 gigahertz frequency. And
that's Tesla's quote on how to think about the entire existence of the universe.
Yeah, and because Billy Carson talks about how everything is made of light, and what keeps these particles together in this table is electromagnetic, the pulling of the electromagnetic of the light particles within this table. And if we find the right frequency, we can place our hand through these particles, because a majority of these particles is air. And so if we find that right frequency, we can put our hand through this table, and it's just a matter of asking the right questions. Like, what is that frequency? How do we get there? And just being curious in nature, hopefully we get there. So
the other thing that connects to this pulling back layers, pulling back is the holographic projection model of that Billy Carson and others have talked about. That if you look at a hologram and you zoom in on a piece of it, you'll see the entire picture within that piece, and then if you zoom in further, you'll see the whole and it just keeps going forever.
Right.
Like a fractal or something.
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
just
but
continuous.
it's all light. It's all light.
He says he came up with the word angels, basically of angles. And here we are talking about extraterrestrial.
Yeah, dude, it all comes full circle, dude. It all comes full circle, both physically and spiritually.
Way to
on so
totally
many-
dominate the did you knows. I don't have one to follow that up with, though.
There's so many did you knows that you can have as a tangent of this did you know.
No doubt.
It just
No,
keeps
that's-
going.
I would say, I was just going to say, Billy Carson, to me, has, of anyone that I've seen, has done the best job of putting it all together. All these different kind of hard to understand. And I, even as you say it, this idea of, time not being linear, we just created that so that we can know when to meet people and, have.
Somebody needs to take Billy Carson and stack up his material in a digestible format to where you get nice little bite sizes at first until you get a little feel for the taste of what he's talking about. And then you can start going off into the different tangents, into the deep ends, because
start a segment here where we just start
happy
doing
to-
that. You know what I'm saying?
Another subcommittee.
But he's got to organize his information, because you guys, we all know as well as this, if you're going to hit 99% of the general population with the hard truth of what he's really talking about, nobody's ready to accept it, right? They're just not. It's immediate shut off, right? So you got to slowly get into it, because you're not going to go back to, hey, you know what? Several 100,000 years, the Anunnaki visited and adjusted our
Right.
chromosomes to create humans.
Right.
They're like, you mean Prometheus?
Yeah.
It's like, it's just, you go right to Hollywood, right?
Sumerian tablets, is that with the original Gospels? Like,
But
what?
you're describing the same thing that we talked about earlier with the UFO thing, which is, why can't we? I'm ready. I'm ready for disclosure. I think the public's ready, and I think maybe one of the thoughts is that the part of the reason, legitimately, not to just throw it all out there, is there kind of needs to be a process where you kind of believe this to get to this, instead of just like, holy crap, they're here. And everyone just has
Red
the
Pill
shock.
Revelations 101. Right.
But then a lot of it's got to be just control. If you don't know, then I can kind of control
No doubt.
what's out there.
Information is the power. If you have access and knowledge of the fourth dimension, well, then anyone in the third dimension is infinitely, at your disposal.
John Lear did an interview with George Knapp in 1987, and he talks about like how the information's always been out there. Like, it's always there in front of us, but it's just a matter of that information is distorted into something that we choose not to believe, because we've been thrown off course, and there's been a lot of distraction. We've had the pandemic. We've had, the things going on in Ukraine, things that are dominating mass media that are throwing us off from something that's staring at us right in the face.
Related. So think of the distractions today, right? Sports, religion, geopolitical conflict. Go back the past decade since the 30s. What have been the distractions that have kept the general population?
War has been a big
Giant
one.
wars, yeah, okay. What else? I mean, we weren't there, but what are the? I mean, sure, sports was a big deal back then, right? Like, look, I'll watch something, it'll blow my mind, but then I'll be like, all right, dude, how many days till football season? You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't wait for Chiefs season.
Well, even to that, civil rights. I mean that.
Okay.
I mean, not a distraction, but a distraction. You know what I mean? We're all eat a burrito. We're all gonna take a shit.
Well, it's these
Hours later. You know what I mean?
These things are created to create division within us, and then we start dividing within each other, and it throws us off of the truth.
And at this point, I mean, look, everybody, like every family out there is having both parents having to work at the same time if they're raising kids. Like, we're far too busy as a society to even have the emotional capacity to care about what's really happening behind the scenes. That's why when people were off during COVID, everything just about crumbled, is because people actually had some time on their hands to pay attention to something. Sports were shut down for a moment, and within a couple of weeks, the streets were flooded with people saying, this is enough. And, whatever took place after that, I mean, we're back to pretty much normal, right?
Yeah, whatever normal means.
Yeah,
these
whatever
days.
that is. I mean, we're just sort of,
Yeah.
laugh about COVID or whatever the case is. But, I mean, what's the next virus coming through that's going to shut things down?
But I do think what's good and positive with technology is that we're able to do things like this: podcasts, share information, all get on the same frequency and wavelength as a collective to gather this information and share it to uncover the truth.
Speaking of which, this episode brought to you by Mad Dad City Stickers. I'm not sure if you got one, Rich, but here you go.
Get you one.
Well, did you guys? So I'm curious, since it's the Red Pill Revelations podcast, if there was a moment. What was your red pill moment? Can you point to a specific time in your life, or a specific thing, or a person, or a moment where you're listening to something, you're like, whoa, and then everything kind of changed as far as your openness to, because this is not everybody that can just come down, and you hear about Billy Carson talking about frequencies, and
it all had to start somewhere.
You're like,
I think so. It's strange how this all ties in, man. But so I'm a big fan of hip hop. I'm a big fan of rap music. Nas goes deep into some of this material from decades ago and some of his stuff. He mentioned in a couple of his verses Ivan Van Sertima talking about the old kingdoms of Africa, but that just stuck in my mind because it was a cool line and a cool song, right? But I'm like, who's this Ivan Van Sertima guy? It was always a question I had in my head. And as time went on, man, like, sure enough, came across him again. So it was 2 times that name and that author clicked in my mind. And then I bought his book. Then I started reading more. And then you're realizing, damn, how come they're not teaching any of this to anyone in the schools where I grew up? You know what I mean? Like, I want to know this stuff. This stuff is, one, it's fascinating. It's intriguing. It fills in so many gaps of information. And it's maddening because you're angry that you didn't learn this earlier, And
can you summarize the...
I mean, dude, Nas goes on to all kinds of different things. I mean, White Jesus is one thing that he talked about in one of his verses. This is maybe sophomore year of high school or something.
Yeah.
It's a song called Poison. It's where it's like, schools where they learn should be burned because it's poison. Something, 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 White Jesus, poison. And I'm just like, White Jesus, poison? Well, I'm white. You know, I'm like, how is this the thing? And so, you look into it, you're like, wait a minute, he is from at least the Middle East, if not, Northern Africa or something.
Yeah.
Of course he's not white. How come I'm thinking he's white? You know what I mean? So like that right there, to answer your question, like little moments like that. But I'm not even joking, dude. Nas was one of the first one to kind of like open that door and at least say, check out in here.
Yeah.
And,
But that's what hip hop used to be about. It didn't used to be about WAP. It used to be about, you would listen to Wu-Tang Clan and they would.
It's not mainstream by any means. It's still out there. Anytime I get a chance to try to find music, there's certainly people doing it. I mean, Nas is still, he has a new album out recently. I don't think he's doing it the same way that he did in the 90s and the early 2000s, but
I think the commonality is just being a curious person. Like, if you had heard that and you weren't a curious person, you'd shrug it off and be like, that's just him busting out some lyrics and it's got some good vibes to it and I'm going to move about my day. But I think we're all curious people at this table that we always have our signals ready to accept things, a piece of information that we can dig into and research further.
To me, when you learn something and it awakes you to some new reality that you haven't considered prior, that to me is the term of what woke means. But that term now has just been grabbed and rebranded to mean something completely political, where it just is a blanket definition for anything you dislike about the other political party.
Yeah, it's used to further agendas. You know, it's there's intent behind it.
That's what I always thought that word meant. So I was real confused, a couple of years ago when the woke movement was having all this backlash. I'm like, what do you? And so, because my definition was different than what the other definition was. So anyway,
Christianity, right?
Yeah.
What was yours? What was your moment?
I was trying to imagine what I know when it comes to the UFO. Well, yeah. So we went on a trip with the mutual friend that was already way down the path of and what she called, kind of awakening and becoming red pilled, or there's another term for that I think she used, but it was kind of one of those things where she was talking about things I'd never heard and thought, well, that's not mainstream. Like nobody who believes.
Is this on your trip to Peru?
Yeah, this was my 40th birthday. Went to Machu Picchu, and
I saw the pictures on Facebook. I never got the invite.
So,
I was a little chip on my shoulder for a while on that one.
We'll be back.
Right on.
No, but anyway, I had, with this mutual friend of ours, we'd always talked about these kind of things, and Bert had never been involved in those conversations. But we had a dinner, 5.5 hours at this La Rosa Nautica. I was in this gazebo right overlooking the ocean at sunset. But we were there 5.5 hours discussing,
which was the
these
end
kind
of the trip. So the whole trip had been these discussions on some flights and some different things, traveling across to Peru and train rides. And my initial impression was, this is a little. I kept going to Michael here and saying, now, so do you believe like what she's saying? Because I'm trying to gauge like your kind of mental state a little bit.
Well, to your credit, you're open-minded. You're going to listen. You're going to consider someone else's viewpoints, and if it challenges where you're at, but it still kind of makes enough sense, you're going to potentially investigate it a little bit further to challenge your beliefs, right? That's the whole thing of listening. Nobody listens much these days. They all got, whether they're siloed into their social media platform that's just reinforcing their views, but nobody's out there exploring, alternate opinions and listening to challenging information that is going to, potentially change their viewpoint. So
some people have more of a, some people are more right brain, some are more left. So need a little bit more of that tangible evidence and kind of, having that background and even as I go back to a plane ride I was on as a kid, I just remember there was a guy I was sitting next to, and I feel like I might have been on the plane ride by myself. I don't know where I was going, but I was next to an adult guy that started talking to me, and somehow we started getting into astral projection and kind of MK Ultra type stuff
on an airline flight.
Just a flight.
He was
just,
next to
Lazaar.
Just a next to Bob
guy.
Lazaar on this flight. He didn't realize it years later.
And so I just
on his way to Los Alamos.
Man, there's some crazy people.
Dude, my pet peeve on a flight is the two people behind me talking that just met, and I have to listen to the whole damn conversation. However, that would have been a cool
I
one
wish
if
I
was
had
just
his
within
name now. Like I'd love to reach out to him and be like, I'd love to hear more.
What
like,
were
tell
you
me,
talking about? Right?
Yeah. What are your qualifications?
Yeah.
Like, where'd you go to school?
But David Fravor. So my first where I can say 100% like I am in. I 100% believe there's something going on that goes against the narrative or public perception or whatever. Was listening to him for 3 hours talk to Joe Rogan in great detail about himself, his backseater, and then two other pilots that saw something that defied all abilities of our current military might, and then you go, okay, so it's one of two things. It's either human-made incredible technology and it wouldn't be the first time that there's something kind of incredible that we kind of keep hidden, or they're out there,
One of those two.
So, and then when you have that, now you believe, now you've kind of got a baseline for anything else that comes, that you're already at this point. So then when you hear other people talk about in history seeing almost the exact same thing, 10,000 years ago, or other pilots saying they see, and then you're kind of like, now you're open to, okay, I actually believe
To
these.
Mike's point, the patterns start connecting just from the things that you've learned throughout your life. And if there's been like little questions, little mental notes you've put aside, you start connecting a few dots. And all you got to do is get a little bit of momentum, and then YouTube does the rest by I'm just throwing you down that path.
Yeah,
The algorithms of
All you gotta
YouTube
do
is
is
the
search for one
algorithms in
thing,
your
man.
mind.
it does a great job of that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I was watching a John Lear interview before I came this morning, and he's with George Knapp, 1987. This is before Lazaar came out in 1989. But John Lear, the father of the Learjet, was really very involved in these extraterrestrials and so forth. And, he was always talking about, when in Roswell, we collected these 4 beings. Well, 3 of them survived. And then they built this electromagnetic building to house them because they are so advanced, they can disappear just by their thought. And so they needed to build this building to keep them contained. And to me, I connect that pattern with those kids that were in Africa
And
that
this-
received the information telepathically.
Ariel,
So
the
you start,
Ariel phenomenon.
yeah.
documentary.
So you start connecting these dots of telepathic thought, and to me, it's like these things are starting to make sense because there's patterns.
Look, that's a good entry point for anybody that needs something to just start down the path. Watch the Ariel phenomenon documentary. If you guys have you seen it, Rich? If you haven't seen it, it's about 90 minutes. It's worth a watch. Check it out. We talked about it last time, but in short, a grade school, I think 1994, in the country of Zimbabwe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the city itself, I forget the city, but the city itself had all kinds of UFO sightings. And then there's a grade school out at recess where the UFO lands, and like 50 grade school kids, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, see it, right? And they see a couple of beings get out. And this is, tens and tens of people that have eyewitnessed this. So then a couple days later, investigative journalists show up with cameras and are interviewing the kids. The kids are talking about it. They're drawing what they see. All kinds of interesting accounts that are similar, but it does not in any way seem rehearsed or coerced. It all seems very genuine because these are grade school kids, and you see the genuine belief that they've seen something, right? And it's not like planned by any means, or at least that's a heck of a job pulling that off if they did. So then the documentary itself, though, is 30 years later, where these kids are now adults, reviewing the footage of that event, and the investigative journalists and the stories have maintained, and they're talking about their life experience since then. It's worth the watch. Check it out. That's a great entry point to being like, oh wow, that is hard to do. Now there's a bunch of fake stuff out there, but to get kids all along the line be as serious as they are, and then 30 years later as adults to still come back and be like, yeah, that man, I've been dealing with this my whole life. Here's how it positively and negatively impacted me, right? Dude, it's powerful. Check it out.
And that sounds like the scene in Black Panther at the end where he just parked it and said, "This is where we're going to be." But
Yeah.
Patterns, man. So they take the truth and then they distort it.
I'm telling you, it's like you said, it's a lot of it's hidden in Hollywood. A lot of it. I mean,
That brings me to
hit it.
a great did you know?
We're just playing off each other these
It
days.
kind of relates to that. So, it sounds so unreal. I had to just double check. I had to look it up because I'm like, this. So the movie Terminator and Terminator 2, and it's Skynet is the AI network, right? And so the whole, I mean, most everybody knows, but it's.
I watched T2 like 3 weeks ago. Like Cooper and I watched it right around 4th of July.
We generate this technology, and it takes over, and decides to get rid of us. So the military right now has a program that is. It also relates to the movie Stealth with Jamie Foxx and
Oh yeah, Jessica Biel.
where these pilots are coming up with some AI. You call them a drone, but it's another craft. It's another jet that is AI piloted, And so they're getting the data from these human pilots as well as the AI craft and adding it all together, downloading it into their new AI system that basically gets all the information that would take a pilot, 10 years to learn, all in a day. And so right now, and I wrote down the names of but the program's called Skyborg.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
It's a real program. And
That'll
so
be the next Hollywood movie, by the way.
Too bad it's not NetSky.
in the
Yeah.
Right.
in the article, well, I'm sure they did it with that in mind, right? I mean, it is AI. I mean, this is like reality matching what Hollywood.